Back in 2012, I was working in a mid-sized company. I was freshly out of college, and this was my first job. I was excited because I knew that the company was doing well, and that there were so many opportunities to grow. The employees were required to stay in the company premises, so everyone was provided accommodation. That was one of the many benefits that I greatly enjoyed. I saved up a lot of money in rent. Our superiors were also super helpful, and to be honest, it was the perfect job until our new manager arrived. The old manager was promoted and given a position in another branch. The new manager was also promoted from another branch and given a position in ours. The first few days were not that terrible. The boss had a bad temper, but her input was always helpful. I understood that she wanted to micromanage things according to her, and it was okay until it didn't adversely affect the team. However, after 2 weeks or so, her micromanaging got worse. She would often inspect what everyone was doing. If someone used their phone in the office, for whatever reason, she would reprimand them badly and ask them to focus on their job better. She would check in with us every single morning for 20 minutes to go over objectives for the week. It was frustrating going over the same things over and over again, and before clocking out, she would ask each and everyone to report what they had done for the day and what they couldn't do. It was something that could be talked about over an email, and everyone in our team was so efficient, so it just rubbed everyone the wrong way. Soon, everyone started believing that the boss was patronizing us and disrespecting us as if we had just started yesterday. I was the youngest in the office, so I had nothing to compare the work environment to. I would just politely do whatever was told to me, unaware of the upcoming events. The apartment I was assigned was in the second floor of Building A. Everyone from my department lived in the same floor. My bedroom window overlooked a gastropub, which was often frequented by the office staff. The gastropub had a very large open space. My colleagues usually preferred it. Sometimes, when it was awfully quiet, you could hear the conversations happening in the area. I never liked eavesdropping, so I usually closed my windows and played very loud music. One day, I was told to hand some files to an assistant in the laboratory. So, I finished my work and quickly went to the laboratory. It must have been a 5-minute walk since the lab was a bit far from our office. I was exhausted, so I wanted to go home soon and take a shower. However, as soon as I reached my floor, I saw my door standing ajar. I was afraid. Nobody else had a key to the apartment except for the company. They wouldn't do this, though. I sneaked in and quickly grabbed my tennis bat near the umbrella stand. I tiptoed my way quickly to my bedroom and saw a woman peeking outside through the window. I tapped her shoulder, and when she turned around, I realized it was my boss. I was scared, but also a bit relieved. I asked her why she was here and how she let herself in. With a composed and cool look on her face, she replied, "I used the keys because I wanted to see what everyone else was doing after office hours. I saw you once when I was in the open space drinking, and I realized that this was the best place to spy on my workers. Moreover, superiors are allowed to check on their juniors." I couldn't believe what she was saying. She wasn't micromanaging anymore. She was being a full-on stalker. She had no rights to know what we did in our free time. Then she asked me why I was late. I told her that she had no business knowing what I did after the office and respectfully told her to get out of my house. This didn't sit well with her for obvious reasons. She looked very offended and told me that if I wasn't wary of the consequences that could happen as a result of insulting my boss, I would have to pay a heavy price later. It was obviously just another way for her to shut me up. She knew I didn't say much because I wasn't confident about my position. It was true that I didn't want to cause any issues because it was my first job. And she had an upper hand, so she thought it would be easy for her to shut me up. The next day, one of my colleagues was late to the office. The boss walked to her and scolded her for being late. It was only 10 minutes. The boss asked her why she was late. When my colleague replied that she just woke up late, the boss told her to stop drinking on work days and to avoid a hangover and getting up late. Everyone was surprised. At lunch, everyone discussed how the boss came to know about my colleague's drinking because she had clearly not mentioned anything about it. Over the next few days, the boss's behavior only worsened. She would break into my apartment often and try to listen to everyone's conversations. She would point out that us partying was the reason why we couldn't complete work in time. She would pick on the slightest things and scold us. Sometimes she would snoop into my important files or documents that were lying around on the table. She would remind everyone to sleep at 10 p.m. by sending a text. If I told her to leave my house, she would be super rude the next day and pick apart everything I did. It was exhausting. This happened for 2 or 3 weeks. Finally, it was time to break my silence. I told everyone about how she had been breaking into my apartment. I revealed each and everything in detail and told them not to visit that gastropub anymore. Nobody could believe how far she was willing to go. I was the youngest, and I didn't say much, so she was taking advantage of me. My colleague told me that not going to the gastropub wouldn't solve our issue. The boss would break into everyone's house at this rate and begin micromanaging even more. This wasn't something that would be getting better with time. It would take at least 3 to 5 years for her to get another promotion, and we won't be able to tolerate her for that long. She was right. She suggested that we should make a plan and try to egg our superiors about the boss's unethical and illegal practices. I understood what I had to do. I wasn't going to let this go. I told them that I would come up with a proper plan, and all they had to do was show up. This was my only chance to prove that I won't just shut up so easily. I called my old boss and told him what was happening. He was astounded, to say the least. He asked me a few questions and told me not to worry. He's still doing a job in the company. My old boss was a sadistic person who loved playing pranks on others. He was a responsible person and always supported his juniors when he needed to be evil. He would choose to be that in a blink of an eye. I knew I needed his help in this situation. A few days later, we planned to have drinks on Wednesday. Everyone made it pretty clear that they were loud about it. We talked about it during lunches, breaks, and the smoking area. It irritated my boss all right, but I could see that the boss was grinning ear to ear like a Cheshire cat. I knew she had a plan. She was going to berate us all and blame our drinking again. However, she was totally unaware of what we had under our sleeves. Fast forward to Wednesday. I called in early and informed my boss that I was going to take a leave because I suddenly became sick with diarrhea. I sent everyone a reminder to arrive at around 6:45-ish at the gastropub. We were ready for the execution. I had already invited my old boss and our director for dinner together like my old boss had asked me to. I was told that the director was a huge fan of butter chicken, and my old boss mentioned that I was a great cook and my butter chicken was heavenly. My aunt lived in the same city, so I had already asked her to help me with making food as a favor as I didn't have much cooking skills. She, on the other hand, worked in a restaurant and was admired and known for her Indian food. After preparing everything by 5 o'clock, my aunt left. I got ready and waited for my guests. My new boss arrived around 7, which was the perfect time. Soon, my old boss and director arrived. We chatted for a few minutes and drank a bit. I heated everything and told them that the dinner was ready. We sat and the director was really enjoying the food. I heard the subtle sound of a key in the lock. Boss Karen entered the hall and locked the door behind her. As she was tiptoeing towards my bedroom, she spotted the 3 of us in the dining area. "What's happening? How did she get in? And why is she in your house?" the director asked. I made an innocent face and replied, "Oh, didn't she tell you? It's part of the routine checkup. She said that the superiors are allowed to check in on the juniors, so she uses the emergency key and usually checks up on the employees when they're drinking. She notes what time they leave and what they talk about because she believes it directly influences our work. And just to be clear, I haven't given her any consent to use my apartment as she'd like, but since she told me that she's allowed to do this, what can I do?" Light left the boss's eyes. The director was enraged. He asked her how she could stalk her juniors and break into my apartment without my consent. She couldn't say anything at all. Her eyes met mine, and I felt she was questioning me about what I was doing. I simply said that I didn't do anything. I was just having dinner with my superiors when she barged in. Since what she was doing was ethical and legal according to her, I didn't feel the need to notify her. The next day, the director came and took a survey. He asked each and everyone about the boss's behavior. We all informed him of every single instance that happened in the office. We also told him how this affected our relationship with clients because she even tried to micromanage the clients but was often put in her place. After the survey, he yelled at the boss for hours. When he came out, I noticed that the boss was crying like a baby and sitting on the floor. A few hours later, everyone saw her leaving the office with all her stuff packed in a cardboard box. She was fired. Some background information. I'm an audio engineer for one of the military brands in the US. Even though I've been working professionally in the music industry for many years prior to entering the military, my lower rank, E4 for those who care, is often a barrier with communicating with higher ups. Some superiors see the value in my experience and advice, but many others see my rank and disregard my opinions. It's not uncommon for me to be loaned out to non-band events to provide guidance. Also, this story takes place in 2020 when the military was under WFH orders. On to the MC. I was in the barracks room, mixing some tunes on an average weekday when I get a call from my first sergeant, 1SG. He's essentially the head honcho in my unit, just under the commander. Hey OP, our unit is having a battalion level change of command ceremony today, and they've had issues with their PA system in the past. Can you go out and help and make sure that things go smoothly? Totally. This was a fairly high level change of command ceremony at the lieutenant colonel level. In the past few ceremonies had gone poorly due to technical problems. I was happy to help. I get prepped and make my way over to the location to start poking around the system. The gear being used is pretty beat up, and it looks like they chuck it all in a dirty closet. Whatever, it still turns on for now. I noticed some people setting up the speakers behind the lectern in a way that would feedback as soon as the mic was unmuted. Also, the cable runs were prime tripping hazards with no cable ramps or gaffer tape to hold them down. This isn't just a safety risk, it's also a good way to rip out all of the connections from the gear. There were a few minor issues that need fixing, but those were the most mission-critical problems. I go to find the person in charge and spot a sergeant major overseeing. I make my way over to him and introduce myself as the sound technician for the band, here to help and advise with sound stuff. Right off the bat, he's a little short with me. What can I do for you, OP? We're a bit busy here. I reiterate I'm here to help with the PA and condense my observations into words. I'm partway into explaining the dangers with his speaker placement when he cuts me off. This isn't our first rodeo, so we know what we're doing. At this point, I'm still going to give it my best shot before this event train wrecks. I make my way over to the staff sergeant plugging in speakers, and we start talking about placement and feedback. A minute or two later, the sergeant major comes over and interrupts us. Hey, didn't you hear me earlier? We don't need you here. You can F off. Roger that, Sergeant Major. So I go home and I report up why I wasn't able to help. The next day, my 1SG tells me about how horribly the system feedback was, along with crackles and pops. Totally derailed the vibe, to the point where the new lieutenant colonel chose to leave the lectern and just talk loudly instead of using a mic. Moreover, the commanding general of the base, a 3-star, had attended and was apparently very unhappy with the whole thing. And lo, the next week, a memo comes down to me from the office of the commanding general to upgrade the sound system and put together a training on how to run it. It still makes me laugh to think what the sergeant major's face must have looked like when they figured out that I was the only person qualified enough to advise them was the one that had told me to F off. Crap gets weird in service sometimes. Yeah, a lieutenant can technically boss around my enlisted, but they're usually still just kids. Rich kids, usually. You never really know how crap will go down. Sometimes those kids realized that they were the kids and were at least slightly humbled to the enlisted folks who knew what they were doing. Sometimes they go off on the power that was handed to them for basically nothing. Yesterday, I got an email from a customer who wanted an in-depth analysis of the dish soap sales for the last 3 years. Easy peasy, it's all automated, but time-consuming to extract that much data. As I was entering the details into the software according to the job order, I see customer-specific product code A190. I check the database and, oh no, that's the code for scented candles. I think they meant A160 dish soap. Due to the past shenanigans, we're supposed to follow job orders to the letter, and if there's any conflict, the product code trumps over whatever else the customer wrote. This is spelled out very clearly in our service agreement. However, if I suspect a mistake, I will give the customer a call so they can amend the job order and avoid wasting time and money. They're usually grateful for the heads up. So I call the customer and barely manage to say I'm from company XYZ, and this lady starts berating me about how long the job is taking. First off, I got the time-stamped email less than 15 minutes ago, and this kind of report usually has a turnaround of 24 to 48 hours. Second, I'm trying to help by pointing out the wrong product code, but this lady just will not let me talk. She keeps cutting me off and talking over me. When I finally manage to get 2 words in and say I wanted to confirm the product code, she tells me to stop wasting her time and just do what the job order says. Then she hangs up on me. You can probably guess how it went. I ran the request as written for product A190, candles, and sent it yesterday by EOB. Lady flipped when she saw it. Apparently, they needed this report for a meeting that now has to be rescheduled. My boss and her boss got involved. The end result is that the customer's boss just sent me a request to run a report for dish soap A160 when convenient and apologizing for the misunderstanding. My company will waive the cost of the extra report. I understand that the lady was moved to a role that limits the amount of damage she can do. Already the fact that she ordered the report the literal day before the meeting was not great. Moral of the story, before telling someone to shut up, maybe listen to what they're saying. Hey, you did her a favor by calling. I would have simply rejected the order with a note that said that the product name and number didn't match. Can't be the first time that's happened.